Hi, Catalina. How are you doing today?
Doing very good. How are you doing today?
Good, good. Appreciate it. I really like the pictures in your background. What's that
Y-
about?
That's my new hobby. That's besides tech, I sometimes paint, and it's a very relaxing hobby that I have now, and I love it. I really enjoy it.
Wow, they're all yours?
Yep.
Wow, it's pretty amazing. Yeah, I used to go to a paint school after school. There was an after school that I had to go to, and I would paint. So, yeah, something we have in common. That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I actually appreciate you doing this. And would you like to tell the people who's watching this show, how did you get into tech?
Yeah. How did I get into tech? Long story short, I'm not gonna give you the super short. I'm gonna give you the fuller story. I'm Colombian originally.
Okay.
I used to be a professor back in Colombia. I'm an electronic engineer, and I used to teach within the electronics classes at a school back in Colombia. And I was teaching about semiconductors and silicon wafers, but I have never really seen a wafer before, like no idea. And I was teaching this in a board, and I was like, okay, no, I need to connect this with the actual industry. So I started to look into scholarships and ways to kind of get engaged into a university to try to get more perspective into fabs, into the actual semiconductor side of it. And I got engaged with this English as a second language program
ESL.
that,
Mhm.
yeah, that one, that is actually part of a lot of the universities. And it was helpful because it's like 4 months stuff. You learn some English. It helps you with the structure, and it actually helps you prepare for some tests that you will have to do at the universities. But if you follow the steps and if you have a decent test and TOEFL, you will be able
Yeah,
to
tough
have
one.
a
Yeah,
yeah, the
yeah.
in-state scholarship, and that's kind of a helpful way to get into the States. And so I started with an F1 visa,
Mm.
just doing a master's in engineering. And that's how I got involved with West Texas A&M University has an alternative energy institute where I was working as a GA, as a graduate assistant.
Wow.
And that was kind of my first hands-on with data, right? Because it was huge amounts of data that they were collecting across all the wind stations and the wind turbines around Texas.
Okay.
So that was kind of my introduction to data.
Mhm.
And because of that scholarship, because of that project, I was able to apply for Texas Tech. And during that application, I learned that Texas Instruments actually had a sponsorship program within tech that because my minorities, and when I say minority, well, a female engineer with that kind of background and with the grades, I actually had very good grades
Of
at
course.
the
Yeah.
university. So it was kind of a very unique opportunity to connect all these dots. And I
Mhm.
was able to get into this program that was sponsored by Texas Instruments.
Yeah, yeah, very
So
powerful company in Texas. Very powerful.
it is. And that was the beginning of tech, right? Like tech was the core of tech, as in we were producing the actual semiconductors.
Mhm.
That was my opportunity to not only see a silicon wafer, but work with one. I did my whole thesis in characterization using all of these testers, using all of these silicon wafers. And that was also kind of my lesson and my beginning of data science journey, right? Because when I was working for Texas Instruments, I was working as a yield engineer. And that meant, process all this data from all over. So I did what I could with the tools that were at my hands at that moment to process all of this data and to try to extract the best out of it. And that was kind of my introduction to tech.
Okay.
That's kind of the long story short.
Did you use RStudio? Just my
Yes.
usual plugin.
Yeah, I did. It was part of, I did a specialization. So I have 3 masters. And The first one was back in Colombia, so I could be a professor. So I was actually
Okay.
working as a professor after I finished my first master's.
Yeah.
And then the other two were in the States. Just so the first one was a little bit of an extension of the
Yeah,
F1,
yeah,
and the
that's
other
what I
one
thought.
was the OT, yeah, OPT, right?
That's what I thought.
So after that, actually, today there are so many tools out there that you can kind of complement some of those skills and ensure that you are still kind of on top of state of the art technology, what we
Mhm.
call sharpening the saw, right?
Sharpening the
Maintaining,
saw. You just taught me this right now. Thank you.
right? Maintaining those skills up to date as much as possible. So I was so immersed into data, and I realized at that time in my life that data is the gold, right?
Oh,
For
wow.
companies, for
Second person
us,
in
for
this season to say that.
oh
You know
yeah.
that.
Oh
Oh,
yeah. I mean, no doubt. No doubt. I mean, it's the only informed decisions for you to make any decision, you need insights. Like, okay, what is the problem? Tell me what the problem is, describe the problem. Like the more you know about the problem, the more options are you gonna be able to provide. As simple as that. It works the same with data. So it works the same with companies. The more you know, the better. But the more you know becomes a little tricky when we are talking about super diverse infrastructures, data all over the place, everything is siloed, teams not able to talk to each other,
mhm.
everybody isolated, working the way they can with the tools they can, right? So it's a very nice situation that triggered my curiosity, and I enrolled into Coursera, and that's how I got my
Yes.
specialization, and I learned R, and I was working with R as well.
Tell me about dataiku. Is it a play on words for haiku? Is that what's going on?
That's funny. Yeah, so Aiku, it's a Japanese word to describe a short, concise poem.
Okay.
And that was part of the inspiration for the data Aiku name, which is, yes, it's one word, but it's pretty much that concise, precise way to work with data in a poetic way where you are combining all these skills, all of
Yeah.
these people that can collaborate with data. Exactly.
Okay. You moved here as an immigrant, just like a lot of people do in the US, right? Um, what do you think of Texas in particular? Because you've been here, you're like a local at this point.
I
So
am.
what do you think, and how would you describe it to the rest of the world who haven't been to Texas yet?
It's very different. So I had a little bit of a cultural shock, I'm not gonna lie, because again, Colombia, I was living in a city, Bogota, 10 million people, full
Mm,
of life, culture, I was very engaged into this life. And then the first university I was at the United States was in Canyon, Texas, which is in the panhandle of Texas. And realistically, it's a very, very isolated
mm-hmm,
town,
mm-hmm,
and there is not really a big city close by.
mm-hmm.
And it's a very different feeling, right? So at the beginning, it was not an easy experience, and I was like missing a lot of my food and my family. And it was kind of okay, I really want to make this happen, and I'm going to push it through. But there were days that were harder than others. So
Yeah,
it's a journey, but today I can tell you 100% from my core, from my heart, for everything, Texas is home. And I love it. And I am in Houston, which is very well strategically located. I mean, I travel around a
mm-hmm,
lot because of my job, and we have two airports here, and it's
mm-hmm,
easy to get pretty much any place in the world. And I love the diversity in terms
mm-hmm.
of food and people and the communities. I'm still very into my Latin community, still salsa and everything that is with the Latin food and all of that. Houston is a very rich city culturally as well, and that has been very nice to discover as part of this journey.
That's good. That's good. That's great. Few things that you miss about Colombia.
Well, I think my family, as in my
Yeah.
sister and my mother, I do miss my cousins. They are like my siblings.
Mm-hmm.
But the good thing about having the opportunity to be in Houston, and it's really is a less than 5 hours flight. And I try to go often. So I do miss many things about Colombia, but I try to maintain that connection and go as often as I can. And still, I will always be the Colombian, and the good music and the Colombian spirit will be with me. It's like I bring a piece of Colombia with me. So I do miss a lot of things, but I maintain a link that helps me navigating that, right? It's like it's a nice feeling. It feels like another life sometimes, right? When you
Yeah,
think
it
about
does. Yeah.
my childhood and my college and my peers at that time, and it was like completely different life. But I feel very lucky to have the experience of
That life
having the
and now.
cultures,
Mhm.
right? It's
Exactly.
the best of the two worlds.
What do you think of Tex-Mex? Sorry, sorry, I had to do this. Sorry, I want to know. You're from Latin America. You
Yeah,
actually have the real food. So what do you think of Tex-Mex?
yeah, I know. So that's a good thing. Latam is very diverse itself, and there is
Very,
still a lot of different flavors and techniques within cuisine in Latam. So when I think about Tex-Mex, I wish there are very good Mexican restaurants in Texas that have very good authentic Mexican food.
okay.
That I love, but the quick and dirty wannabe Tex-Mex, that's a different story.
Okay. Okay. So actually, we're into our last two questions, and these are the where you want to inspire the youth, and not only the youth, but anybody who's watching this video, right? So here I go. What would you say to kids in school or college who are still in the fence and pursuing tech or deciding on a solid career?
Yeah. So I will say, first of all, whatever you do in life, you have to be passionate about it. That's kind of stage one. So the second thing there is that you don't have to have a solid ABC plan. This is what it's going to be, period, because that's not how life works. And perhaps you should be able to adjust to new opportunities and discover what really drives you. I have seen a lot of people changing careers, and like originally you study something, and what that really is doing is helping your logic and the way that you think and the way that you process information, right? So you are actually kind of getting empowered to face the world from different perspectives, but really the hands-on experience. So look for internships when you can, look for real problems when you can. Whatever you are gonna put your effort in to try to connect as many dots as possible. Like, okay, I need to learn about data or Python or R or whatever. Well, yeah, but what is gonna be the data about, and what it makes you passionate about it? Like, how are you gonna connect that with something else that is gonna drive you a little farther, right?
Mhm.
So opportunities are there, and it's a matter of finding them, but they exist, and you need to be smart about it. Like for me, I am very aware about the minority that I am, right? I am Latin woman in a very male-dominated field. I am an engineer. I am definitely not a stereotype engineer, but I have been using that into my advantage, right? So
Mhm.
again, information is power. So you can pretty much find the scholarships that are dedicated to minorities and
Mhm.
try to complement that education based on that final vision and final goal. And the sky is the limit in terms of the things that you can accomplish when you put your heart into it and you feel passionate about it. And in terms of developing skills, today more than ever, there are opportunities out there
Yeah.
that we didn't have 20 years ago.
YouTube, just YouTube.
Like YouTube, Google, like, wow, like
Ninety
really,
percent, 90% of everything I know is from YouTube.
I know, like today there is pretty much no excuse to learn something,
No.
right? Like go deeper into something, like be passionate about it and complement it with the so what.
Yeah. There's a Japanese word called meraki. And this is where
Mm-hmm.
I kind of show off that I know this fancy word, but just like you said, you have to put your soul into it. That's what it is. Meraki, I think, means if you build something, let's say this mouse, you're putting your soul inside that mouse and leaving it like a
I love
part of
it.
the product.
Like a part of you. Yeah,
Yeah,
I
it's
love it.
yeah,
That's exactly it. Passionate about it.
yeah,
I actually very good analogy. Yeah.
yeah. Uh, the last most beautiful question that I ask all my guests is, if you had all the power on this planet, what would you do?
Yeah, that's a very hypothetical question. And my answer is going to be equally hypothetical, but I think an ideal world won't have any country borders. Like for me, those borders are imaginary lines that were not part of the planet Earth to start with. And
Sure.
I think that that perhaps will allow us to collectively think as the human species that we are and give us better perspective. But again, hypothetical answer, but you asked, so.
Yeah, no, it's a beautiful answer. And actually, there actually wasn't borders. There was no Mexican-US border. California was part of Mexico. There wasn't any,
Yep.
um, like the Mongol Empire expanded from China to Turkey at one point. No borders there. So everything is kind of man-made. So you're kind of right. And hopefully, maybe one day, while we're still living, we'll see that world without any borders. Highly
That
unlikely,
will be
though.
awesome.
Yeah.
That would be very phenomenal. Like, let's think as humans because we are all humans, and that's the one thing that we have in common. So let's maximize that opportunity.
Yeah. So I appreciate you having here. I'm gonna slowly stop recording now, and thank you so much, Catalina.
You're very welcome.